Um, yes, so thanks very much for coming, everybody. And I'm delighted to introduce Yolande Watson this evening. And she's been a counsellor for Herefordshire from 2019 till 2023. And then she created a really unique citizen science project to enable members of the public to participate in surveying light pollution and decide how best to enhance dark skies in their communities. So Yolande is at present an executive member of the Herefordshire CPRE campaign for the countryside, as we know, and the countryside charity, yes, and it's the lead for Dark Skies Herefordshire. So her quest is to create a Dark Skies Herefordshire overall, and it comes from her professional background in public health, development management, and environmentalism, because long-term exposure to light pollution has a negative impact on every living thing, including humans, and we'll hear a lot about that this evening. So there's already a reasonable sized group across Herefordshire, and we'll come back at the end to hopefully anybody that's interested here could add to that group, and then we could make a stronger push to protect this incredibly rare resource in England, and we're one of the last parts of it. So welcome, Yolande.
Great, thank you, Gordon, and I hope everyone can hear me all right. Now, Rachel, you're going to have to help me because you're the slide lady. So here we are, first one. So the title of the name is Blinded by the Light. And I just want to say I'm not an astronomer, an ecologist, a planner, or I'm just an enthusiastic environmentalist who is a conscious consumer. So when I started this project in 2022, I think that I was quite naive what I was getting into. But tonight, what we're going to do is cover the following points. Rachel, could you just put the next slide on, please? So I'm going to introduce you to Dark Skies Herefordshire and explain what our philosophy is, what our basic philosophy is. Talk about what is light pollution and why dark skies are important to humans and the natural environment. And then really just skim across some simple solutions you can put in place to reduce light pollution, enhance biodiversity, save money, and see the stars. And then at the end, we're going to have some questions and answers. So I think I'll be talking for about 35 minutes. It might go in a little bit further, but I'm looking forward to, seeing what your questions are. Okay, so Rachel, next slide, please. So Dark Skies Herefordshire, I set it up actually in 2022 with a small cohort of volunteers within Walford. We actually had Lee Harleen Bowen come over and teach us how to do sky quality meter readings, to take light pollution readings, and I'll talk more about that later. But the reason why I set it up is that being a Herefordshire councillor, whenever I went on a walk, I'd often get stopped by members of the public to ask me questions. And so my walk sometimes, even if I went up for half an hour, would end up sometimes be 2 hours. So I started walking and cycling at night, and I couldn't believe actually how much light pollution there was that within my ward. So I wanted to do something, and so this is basically the project. It's initially started under Wye Valley Society, and as of January this year, I've been sitting under, or it's under the aegis of CPRE, which is a countryside charity. So the Dark Skies Herefordshire project is totally volunteer-led. We don't have any paid members. And our aim is to basically conserve and enhance dark skies across the rural landscape of Herefordshire that doesn't, isolate or, urban areas, but it's basically looking at the urban fringe and the rural areas. It's somewhere where we can start. Raise people's awareness of artificial light at night, which is known as ALAN, and work with our partners to inform members of the public how ALAN can negatively affect the health of plants, nighttime pollinators, birds, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and humans. So the way that we do is I work with groups of individuals, community groups, and parish councils. And as a group of volunteers, we help to set up, the projects locally, and then CPRE, myself and a core team, usually Felicity, who is our data analyst, deliver training, and we loan out the sky quality meters. We organise 6 weekly meetings and basically sharing information. And it's going okay. We're still quite small, but we're gathering pace. And I work in partnership with Herefordshire Wildlife Trust, the National Landscape-wide Adapt to Change team, and Visit Herefordshire, because tourism is actually quite important, and dark skies experiences are actually getting more and more popular, but we can talk about that later. Okay, next slide, please, Rachel. So basically what we do, if you look at the slide, each telescope is actually a reading from a sky quality meter. And basically what volunteers do is that they take readings one night during a 10-day period, 5 days either side, or 4 days either side of the new moon, which is the darkest period. And then they go out and use a sky quality meter. It's a very simple little device. I wish I had one now with me to show you, but it's basically a very simple device that you hold up. It's a small box above your head and take a reading. And so each of these telescopes is one reading. The green shows that it's low light pollution. Oh, thank you, Gordon. So Gordon's showing you. And the amber is where there's moderate light pollution, and the red is actually where there's serious light pollution. And we have various gradients, and it's Felicity who actually creates these maps. We use an EpiCollect application available through the mobile, and it's a really good way to actually see where there are hotspots. It's often you can do a walkabout survey, and the walkabout survey is actually downloadable from the CPRE website. On the CPRE Dark Skies webpage, which will be given at the end of this presentation, there's also information about what individuals can do, businesses and communities. There's information sheets about what is good lighting, and doing those simple surveys. So yeah, and we can talk about that more if you want to later. Okay, next slide, please, Rachel. So what is light pollution? And I really like this picture because it really says everything. Basically, there's 4 key what we call parameters of light pollution. It's sky glow, glare, spill, or what can be caused as trespass, and clutter. So looking at this this image is that you can actually see where the direct upward light can get reflected onto and down from the clouds, and where the directional light is actually where we need the light. The glare zone, if anyone has ever been in the eye of a car with LED lights, it certainly can stop you in your tracks. And then the light trespass is going over the actual boundaries, either into property or outside of the area where it needs to be. It's a very simple diagram, but it really does describe where it is. And clutter is basically where there is a collection of lights. So what I see more and more are houses being built in the countryside, which have got floor-to-ceiling windows without curtains. And if you have several along a lane, they look like light boxes, and that's what we call as clutter. So it's a combination of lots of lighted buildings in one area. Okay, next slide, please, Rachel. So our philosophy basically is called the precautionary principle. It's actually saying that we want to take preventive action in the face of uncertainty. There is a research about the impact of light pollution, and there are some fantastic research papers out there, and Bug Life has got and many of the other like British Astronomical Association, Dark Skies UK, International Dark Skies Association, and there is a database available, and there's a huge amount of research. But actually, when it comes to UK policy, and particularly around planning, and also the impact on human health, there was a paper written by the House of Lords Science and Technology Committee in July last year, and it talks about the pollutants of light pollution and noise pollution, and it's known as a neglected pollutant, and we really should be starting to do. So until there is certainty, we actually start here at, for the Dark Skies Herefordshire project, we really want to start with having natural darkness and only add the artificial light for specific purposes. It's also about shifting the burden of proof to those who are skeptical or unsure. And it's really about gathering and sharing evidence to inform lighting behaviour. A lot of people think that the more light you have, the safer you are. But actually that's a myth, because if you stand underneath the glare of a light, you're not probably going to be seen at all. So if you have floodlights and a local little burglar comes around, he or she wouldn't be seen underneath that light. So it's something to really think about. Low lights are actually offer much more secure safety and security. Exploring a wider range of alternatives to possible harmful actions. And I think that it's about providing various actions that we can all take for all ages. It's really about making it as simple as possible to actually change our lighting behaviours and why we need light. Natural darkness is a very nice thing, and looking at the moonlight and the stars, to enjoy it and enable others to enjoy it too. And the fourth point is actually what I think that Dark Skies Herefordshire and our coordinators do really, really well, is about increasing public participation and decision making. So once we start a project, say for Claire, who's in the Archenfield Environmental Community Group, they've been doing night watch surveys with bat surveys to again engage and get people talking about dark skies, but also about the impact on biodiversity. At Farnhope Parish Council, they've got a dedicated bench, but they're doing a year of talks and walks and talks about. It started with a dawn chorus. Global walks, stargazing is actually this month. So it's fantastic that each of the groups take it upon themselves, and and we we work together. I hopefully support them and they feel supported, to also link with all the other research that we can give them to provide the evidence and information support that they need. Okay, next slide, please, Rachel. So why are dark skies important? Well, I've got a whole range of pictures here, of images, and I'm just going to talk through them. And it starts with the one on the left, top left. It's a tree underneath a street light, followed by insects and typically moths going around a light bulb. The Institute for Lighting Professionals, a guidance note on bats and artificial lighting at night, birds in front of a high-rise building. Then at the bottom left is a toad, and followed by a glowworm, red squirrel, and humans. And basically, before I go into each of the impacts of artificial light at night on the individual species, I think one thing to recognize is that our eyesight has not changed since we've, evolved. Is that the artificial light and the evolution of light in itself is another talk that we could go into. But when you're looking at, our forefathers were using fires, candles, gas lights, they were warm lights. But now we have much more blue, white light through LED lights, etc. So what's the impact on these blue, white lights? Well, on plants is that research is showing that trees that grow underneath a street light, the leaves are much tougher at the top than they are at the bottom. And that's a problem for insects feeding on those leaves. They're tough. Like any of us, if any of us sit under the sun for too long, we get a little bit burned, but our skins can get quite leathery as well. And that's the same for leaves. I'm putting it in layman's terms, and if there are any botanists in the audience, please don't be screaming. But if you've got a contribution, I'd really like to hear from you. But I'm just doing it in layman's terms, or laywoman's terms too. So the next slide is about the insects. Now, moths are key nighttime pollinators. 2/3 of our pollinators are either semi or pure nocturnal pollinators. And many die of exhaustion by feeding on artificial light at night, and their flight paths become quite disorientated. And there was recently Chris Packham did a wonderful little film about the dorsal of the moths, the dorsal wing, and how it follows the light of the light bulb. And of course, there are, for bats, some bats will feed on those insects that are going to the light bulb, but there are other species of bats that won't. So I think the lesser horseshoe bat really avoids as much light as possible. Some quite like the dark spaces, whereas others are opportunistic. And again, if there's a bat ecologist in the audience, correct me if I'm wrong, but pipistrelles, I understand, and soprano pipistrelles, do take the opportunity to feed off insects that are, hanging around a light bulb, literally. Birds, garden birds are actually disturbed from sleep by sudden lighting, and actually the research is showing that they actually begin singing before dawn. And robins are especially seen to be sensitive to the light and will extend their feeding period into the nighttime where artificial light is present. Owls might find hunting more difficult in lit urban areas, and birds that prefer to start migration flights at night can come often disorientated. And actually, a lot of birds are killed by flying into windows, through the glare or, reflection. Humans have got a lot to answer for, really, about what we put in place. And yeah, we're very inventive, but I think sometimes we don't often look at the actual impact on other species around us. So for frogs and toads, artificial light actually interferes with their breeding rituals, and it's interferes with their reproduction and can reduce their populations. Before I came on tonight, I actually was reading an article which talks about croaking science, artificial light at night, a problem for amphibians. And what they're saying is that frog species appear to be affected by light pollution, with individuals calling less frequently and moving more often. And actually their life stages are impacted, including the growth, development, activity of larvae, juveniles and adults. Again, often whilst we can see individual impacts, when you start to look at the holistic impact on an ecosystem, it's quite remarkable and I think significant. Female glowworms emit a low greenish light to attract mates, and even low-level sky glow from distant light sources, such as floodlit plain fields or towns, will actually lessen their breeding success. And I don't know if there's anyone in the audience that actually has seen glowworms. I was really lucky growing up in New Zealand. Our farm, we actually had glowworms, and they are just stunning. It's like having your own star system, on your backyard. It's just wonderful, and for a child, it's magical. It's like little magical fairies. So squirrels, mammals, and ourselves, we're also affected by light pollution. And I think that blue light during the day is critical to synchronizing our circadian rhythms. And we're not designed to see blue light at night. Many of the adverse effects of chronic light exposure at night appear to be mediated by abnormal light time simulation of this timekeeping pathway and in the blue light wavelengths in the light spectrum. And so when this pathway is disrupted by exposure to white light or only blue light at night, it initiates a chain reaction that results in decreased energy, mood, performance, and vigilance, and an increased risk of errors, accidents, injuries, absenteeism apparently, and workplace turnover. For me as a public health practitioner, over the long term, continuous light exposure at night results in sustained hormonal dysregulation, leading to significant health consequences, including sleep disorders, diabetes, heart disease, depression, and even certain types of cancer, including breast, prostate, and colon cancers. And these research papers are really available. But again, I'm very glad that the House of Lords are taking it on board and have actually made some recommendations to DEFRA to put some legislation in place. Okay, next slide, please, Rachel. So for me, I know I'm being a bit dramatic, is that the amount of light generated by one street light can be several hundred or even several thousand times brighter than the moonlight. You know, we've all evolved, all our species on Earth have actually evolved with the natural rhythms, circadian rhythms, and moonlight has been a major source. Growing up in New Zealand, I know with the Maoris who have navigated using the star system, and our constellations have had huge meaning for our culture. To see the stars as connects us with that. But it's a wondrous thing standing out, and if you do have access to dark skies, it's really magical to look up at the stars and the moon. So for me, the detrimental effects are its destruction. It's causing, creating lower fertility in species, dis-ease with the hormonal dysregulation, distraction, the moonlight. So species like migratory birds and butterflies are coming off their pathways and being misled by their misdirected through artificial light rather than the natural moonlight. Disruptions to lower growth rates, delayed reproductive maturity, lower fertility, weaker species, and reduced survival. And unfortunately, death, you know, so for those poor moths flying around that light bulb and being predated upon by bats, and flying into windows, you know, it's really, I don't want to be bringing doom, but I think that if we can really look at the, our lives in a total ecosystem, I think that we can actually start to maybe take some responsibility about how we can just either switch off or just, you know, look at responsible outdoor lighting. Okay, would you go to the next slide, please, Rachel? So what can I do? What can you do? What can we do? So all I would ask is that initially look at the lighting within your own home, your work and your community. Is it essential? You know, is it necessary? Is it possible to switch off all unnecessary lights? I was brought up by my father, and I come from Yorkshire originally, and my father, being a Yorkshireman, liked to turn off all the lights. So we were trained very young to switch off lights when we weren't needing, when they weren't in use. So switching off all unnecessary lights, you'll save energy, carbon, and money. It's a win-win. I think curtains, closing, drawing curtains and closing your blinds on your windows at night, it's good for insulation, and it's again saving money. Position lights as low as possible and aim them downwards or to where they're needed. So it's directional light. So when angling lights, make sure that you think about how it impacts on your neighbours too. So not glaring into their windows, and always position them considerately. One of the things that we actually did as a Walford group was actually go around our local village halls, and we were doing light meter readings from immediately underneath the security lights to 3 meters, 6 meters, you know, and right out to the margins. And it was amazing actually how much light pollution through the sky quality meters were coming up. And when we wrote to the committees and actually said, you know, of course we got permission from them first, but it was great because they reacted, and one had floodlights that were, you know, straight up and down. And so we were able to get them to tilt them by 90 degrees, and it had a significant impact. And the other village hall actually ended up turning the lights off that were glowing into the local woodland. So I think that we can do small things. One of our neighbours had a light that was lighting up his sign in the hedge, and he switched that off and ended up painting some stones bright white, and putting those on his driveway so that you know, people could actually follow the bright white stones rather than finding him through his sign being lit up. But it's little simple things like that can make a huge impact. So the other thing is about fitting hoods over the light to reduce light pollution of the night sky, turning garden lights off when not in use, or use motion sensors or timers for essential or security lighting, so they only come on when you're absolutely necessary. Choose low intensity lighting and warmer hues, warm, white, yellow or amber. Solar lighting is safe, cheap and emits a dull glow suitable for garden use. But again, is it really necessary? And what I do ask is that asking local councils to adopt switch off schemes, even part night lighting instead of full night lighting, has been found to reduce negative impact on behaviours of moths. So the next slide is something from the International Dark Skies Association. Rachel, can you put on the next slide, please? So these are the 5 lighting principles for responsible outdoor lighting. And so when you've got Alan, we like you to employ Roland, which is responsible outdoor light at night. So if anyone's a cartoonist out there, it would be a really great opportunity to do something between Alan and Roland. But so first of all, it's about use light only if it's needed. It's targeted, it's low level, controlled and warm coloured. And this actual postcard is on the Dark Skies Herefordshire webpage. And it is downloadable, as with many other resources from the International Dark Skies Association. So here we go. So next slide, please, Rachel. So this is a really useful, I think, slide to actually see about what mitigation measures can be put in place for particular types of lighting. So from road or street lighting, where it could be just shielded, less harsh light bulbs, and adaptive lighting, like for timed, if lights could be off between 12 midnight and 5 a.m, etc. Bridge lighting may be appropriate for River Wye. The aesthetic lighting, a lot of people at the, I don't know if it's happening in your local area, but here where I live, a lot of people are uplighting trees. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or it's, I don't know, the thing to do, but that's also having an impact. And again, I'm not quite sure why, but yeah, it'd be much nicer for everyone out, for the bats and the moths and everyone else to living in that tree to have some nighttime. The facade lighting, again, not to light up the whole side of a building, but to just have a downward light when needed, and to, yeah, consider all the other species that may be inhabiting or going around that particular building. And here it's the church. And of course, sky glow is that, again, shielded light, directional light. It's just such a simple, just put a hood on it, would be very, very good indeed. Okay, Rachel, next slide, please. If there are any policymakers in the audience, there are some really good documents out there. There is the local UK Dark Skies Partnership toolkit called the Local Authorities, Communities and Dark Skies Toolkit. And that's got lots of really good information in that one. And there's also Towards a Dark Skies Standard, which is a lighting guide to protect dark skies from local need to landscape impact. Again, a good one that we could all be doing, and something for Herefordshire Council to be looking at. I was really glad to see that within the new local plan that dark skies is included within the built environment section. But I would really like to see environmental lighting zones where there are real clear, you know, from intrinsically dark spaces to urban spaces, which can be more lit. But to have these clear environmental zones, we could really do with some clearer policy and some direction, which would be good. But this document is available, is downloadable, and it really does outline quite clearly what we can actually do. I think for Dark Skies Herefordshire, it's about putting dark infrastructure alongside green infrastructure. The two really do need to work together. CPRE has a national heroes project, and I think that hedgerows should not be lit. I think let them be wildlife corridors, and to allow them to be dark and green infrastructure corridors. That would be absolutely fantastic. I think it would make a good start. So having artificial light at night free area zones would be a good start to helping our biodiversity thrive. Okay, and the last slide, please, Rachel. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to do this project without the help and support of the volunteers. You know, everyone on the project is a volunteer. If anyone's interested in getting involved in the Dark Skies project, all they have to do is send me an email, and I then come along, or we have a chat, and what we do is I deliver the training, and really find out what you would like to do, and we take it from there, really. And as I said, there are some fantastic groups doing some really good work already and integrating dark skies into their plans and policies. Something that I'll be uploading onto the Dark Skies Herefordshire webpage is actually for the biodiversity plans that can be downloaded for parish and town councils, because the biodiversity plan is a statutory duty that's aligned with, I think, the Environmental Act of 2021. But it's I've just come up with some ideas that people could actually include to consider dark infrastructure, and I hope that will be found helpful. So that's the web page, and I just would like to acknowledge Keith, who one of our volunteers up near Hay-on-Wye, and he took this photo, and we've had some really beautiful photos of the Milky Way. So I hope this has been of interest to you, and we've got plenty of time for questions and other conversations. So yeah, that's me.
That's great, Yolande. Thanks very much. And I'd just like to reiterate from the point of view of what you were saying. I've been part of the British Astronomy Association campaign for dark skies for about 10 years now, and unfortunately we just lost the main leader of that, Bob Misen. But he, just to quote him, a few of the things he says to couple in with your points, you know, the unspoiled dark sky is unofficially but undeniably an area of outstanding natural beauty, and it's also a site of special scientific interest. But it remains that the night sky, half of our environment, remains the only part of the environment with so little protection in the law. And that it's good to hear the House of Lords doing something, but we just need to move faster. And in Kington, for example, we did manage to put in some lines about dark sky in the local plan way back in 2012. But as local plans do take so long, that's still meandering around and difficult to get actually formally set up. But you could put it in your own local plan for your own area. But the other thing is the deep psychological aspect about light pollution in the night sky. And humans have been involved with the night sky all the time we've evolved, and the problem is now, in a very short amount of time, because the rate at which the dark sky is going is very fast, our children are going to grow up with only knowing sky glow. They won't be able to see the sky, and it's blocking the beauty and wonder of where basically we've all come from originally, from the stars, and it's all being invisible to them. So it's a terrible potential future. And in this part of England, we represent the only part of the dark sky at this level of darkness left until you go past Kielder Forest up in the Northumberland. So it's a very precious area, and it will disappear unless we do something about it quite quickly. There have been good things. I mean, we've had presentations from Hereford Council, and as you know, Ben Boswell's, some of you know him, one of his key projects was to change over all the street lamps to low energy LED. But unfortunately, at that time, it was done with, it wasn't possible to get a wide choice of colors at that time, and it was done with very white light. But the good news is, whenever there's an opportunity, those heads of streetlights are being replaced with a much warmer light, and also they're being replaced with a special control unit that can reduce the intensity at night at a certain time, at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And that is much more acceptable to people than has been tried in Paris by turning the lights off completely. So that's all on the hand, but it costs about £4,000 to £5,000 a head, a street lamp head, and at the moment they can only do that when it goes faulty. So any questions now then, with all this loads of information that we've been given, and any thoughts or any questions or comments that you'd like to make?
One thing I do want to say, actually, Gordon, is that there is, as you said, that there's very little policy. There's the statutory nuisance where if a light is shining into your bedroom, that you can actually, get environmental health officers to come and check it. But in terms of planning, there's very little. There's something if it's a new householder or a full planning application. It's great that the ecologist, it's overseen by the ecologist, and they can actually write something about asking for a low, for appropriate lights, responsible outdoor lighting. But I think that there is some real room to make some really much stronger policy and legislation. I think that there's a lot to go, particularly about retrospective fitting and security lighting.
Thanks, Yolande. That's great. That's good to hear. And also, as an aside to that, if any of you or anybody that you know wants any light to be stopped or shaded in any direction, you can apply to that for the council to that, and they're very up for helping that happen. And that is something that we can help direct you to the relevant part of the council. You probably won't thank me for saying so. It's probably Richard Vaughan in the council, but we come back to that. Nick, you've got your hand up. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, well, as you know, I'm connected to the diocese, and there has been for a long time a sort of trend of lighting up churches in order to raise money. And I'm just wondering whether you've had any contact with the new diocesan environment officer, and whether we might sort of try and educate people that this needs to be done either in a very sensitive way with the shading and so on, or not done at all.
I thought that it had actually reduced going around the country and the county, but is it still the directive that?
Right. Okay. You're probably more up to date than I am. I mean, I'm not actually a parish priest, but I certainly know of some churches which are still lit up.
But it would certainly be a good thing to
raise awareness,
have a discussion,
anyway,
have a discussion, a paragraph of it at least to them, because I think they would, I would hope, be interested in not causing a problem. Sally, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Thanks. That was excellent, Yolande. At our parish hall, sorry, parish hall. 3 new lights have recently been installed, and they're all extremely bright, cold light, and one actually it blinds road users. It comes on, it's sensor one, and every time a car passes, it comes on. And I raised it with the committee and was told that it was in the interests of safety. So we know that's a myth, but I'm just wondering, what are the arguments really to combat that, you know, that thinking? Combat is probably too strong a word, but
that's all right. But thanks, Sally. I think that to actually point out that if you're blinded and it causes an accident, it's a police matter. It's actually not a council matter or a highways matter. It's actually a police matter because of blinded by the light, literally. I think the other thing is that I'd be very happy to come over and do a talk, you know, to your parish, and kind of like, I'm not a lighting expert, but it's just starting to have those conversations, and it's about impact to look at shielded lights and just putting those 5 principles in place, as you're saying, is that the myth of I actually think that it's really good marketing, actually. I think that the brighter the light, the more safe that people feel. And something that we've not taken account of is that it's like being bright and shiny. So having bright, shiny things, we're like little magpies, you know, and we just like them all around us. And we like to be having the daylight at nighttime. But actually it's doing us a lot of harm, I know, from a public health perspective, but it's a culture, it really is a behavior change. And I think it's just starting those conversations to actually say, do we really need this? Is it necessary light? And whose safety are we really protecting? And looking at those impacts, but actually starting to ask the reason why and why we do what we do. It's a good start, I think, Sally. But again, it's what we try not to do is to have confrontations with our neighbours or anything like that. And, you know, one of the things that I point out in the training is not to go up people's driveways to actually point out that their floodlight or anything is creating. But it's just basically starting a conversation. And I think that, as I say, I'm very happy to come over and talk. But I think even just dropping into the conversation about saying, oh, you know, it's about why do we have so much light? And did you realize about blue light or white light is not good light? And see how you go. But let us know, Sally, how you know, good luck. And thanks for the bravery for even approaching the subject first. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Steve.
Steve.
You unmute. Need to unmute, Steve.
Okay, hope you can hear me now.
Yeah.
I actually live in the edge of a Shropshire village, right against the countryside. And we've had a new estate put down the bottom of our fields. It kind of went through on planning. There should have been a lighting plan. The only lighting plan there was a thing which showed the location of the lights. There was nothing that actually considered the wildlife, even though there should have been, but it went through. Is there anything I can do? Because it's on all the time, from dawn till dusk. It shines all over my field. It shines on the swale that they've got, which should be a nice wildlife area. I just kind of think, well, I'm in a slightly cleft stick because I've actually got some development of my own. So I've got to put in lighting plans, and I don't mind doing that. We'll have minimal lighting. So any thoughts of what I can do?
Are they low energy LED lights that only face down, a bit like we have?
Or
are they going up?
No, they don't. They do face down, but
Okay.
they cover a very large area. A very large area. So they cover probably 40 to 50 meters into my field. You can see them shining on an area in the field.
You could, I mean, Shropshire Council has also been very open to discussions about shading, the same as Herefordshire has, because shading doesn't remove the efficiency of the light or anything, but it does avoid, obviously, problems for people around. So shading is a first attempt, and it also makes it better for the nighttime wildlife as well.
Yeah.
Steve, having been a Herefordshire councillor, I would say talk to your local councillor and also talk to your parish council, because if it's shining into fields, that sounds pretty bad trespass actually. If it's shining into people's houses, that's an environmental health issue. But I think it's just starting those conversations, and I think initially it's to actually see what your local ward councillor or your local Shropshire councillor, what his or her perspective is. But there, again, it's really, I'm surprised with a new development that there was no lighting design plan. That's quite surprising, because I'm very aware that design plans have to be submitted in terms for not only climate change, but it's all those policies, isn't it? It's climate change, it's about biodiversity, geodiversity, landscape, and visual impact. And the visual impact's quite a big one. Now, I'm going to ask a dumb question, Steve, is that, are you part of an area of outstanding natural beauty where you live?
Unfortunately, I can see the area of outstanding natural beauty, but I'm not in it. So we're just against it.
Okay. But even so, even if you can see it, but you're not part of it, it might be actually worth contacting them as well, because from a visual impact, I think that it's just starting those conversations and see where the traction is. And then, just having those conversations around environmental zoning and appropriate lighting for whatever reason, whether it's biodiversity or for carbon, climate change, cost. But good luck. Could you let us know how you get on, Steve, if that's okay? Because we're thinking of having a follow-up after this to actually find out what, some real examples of what people have done. So it'd be really good to find out how you get on.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Before,
and you can,
before
I was just going to say, you could. Sorry, Gordon, can I just say, and write us an email if you like as well, Steve. It's darkskiesherefordshire@outlook.com. So if you need any extra information or help or papers, etc., just get in touch, okay?
Before I hand over to John, I just reminded myself to say that if it's okay with everybody who's attended this evening, via the booking system, we could keep you in the loop about the next steps of what things, and there's a newsletter that Yolande can send out, and if that's all okay, we'll send it to the attendees of this meeting this evening. And if you don't like that, then please let us know. But if that's okay with you, we'll continue with that, because obviously what we're trying to do is have a county-wide approach to this whole project and keep our county beautiful in its darkness as well. John, can I hand over to you and your question? John Bottomley.
Thank you, Gordon. I guess we're all very much fans of dark skies, and clearly this is an important thing that we need to press in Herefordshire, not least. I was intrigued when you said that we're the darkest county apart from possibly Northumberland. Isn't this a case of raising the profile, which is what you're doing tonight? What a shame there aren't even more people. But lobbying our councillors, the planning committee need to be kept up to date. The planners, the individual planners, need to be reminded every for months that, are you really putting this in the design and access statement, just highlighting the thing, because it's so important. And I just worry that we're not being, or are we being robust enough to say, come on chaps, you have a job to do, and lighting is part of that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. That's excellent points. We're trying to incorporate this is a project in the Hereford Climate and Nature Partnership, on which I'm on the board of, and I've just been in the process of discussing this with the rest of the energy subgroup of the Hereford Climate and Nature Partnership. Hopefully you are all aware of that, because we're all beaming away as volunteers doing things, and that's how take a look at the Herefordshire website about what we're doing, lots of different aspects. And through that, or we can do it individually, of course, as well, we could compose a guidance letter to the planners in Herefordshire Council and start a discussion about that. We're just doing the same thing with anaerobic digestion, for example, nothing to do with tonight's topic, but the same principle, to try and get a response back about how we can improve the planning controls and building regulations of that. So yes.
Can I just add as well, Gordon, sorry, Brian, I know you want to say something too, is that I think you're right. It's at every level. If parish councils can actually ask for it, town councils, county councillors, you know, it's about members of the public, you know, if you're concerned, just write, and something that I'll be putting up in the next 6 weeks or so is just some guidance around planning policy for Herefordshire. So it goes from the national planning policy framework to the local plan. There's the Wildlife and Countryside Act, which might be of interest to you actually, Steve, because there are, you know, some, you know, designated areas like the Wye Valley National Landscapes and the Malvern Hills, you know, they've got extra protections, they've got position statements on lighting and lighting guidance, but that's something we really need to encourage, like Herefordshire Council, to get on board with as well, much more directive. The other thing I was going to say that I forgot too, Steve, was that the Bat Conservation Trust, I would get in touch with your local Bat group, and they might be able to help you. And as Claire introduced me to, is the Night Watch, the survey being done by the Bat Conservation Trust. And the Eco Church movement is a really another good way where dark skies can actually be discussed, and an opportunity to look at lighting. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Ryan, do you want to come in now? Your question?
Right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Good to see you again, Gordon, by the way. It's been a while. Yeah, in my career, I've designed a lot of lighting, by the way, for use on television systems, particularly for remote lighting. So I'm well aware of the generation of light and the need to put it where it's going to be used. It should not be wasted. And that fits in with saving energy as well. I got dragged into street lighting design around about 2010 via our volunteer effort to rescue the gas lights in Malvern. And that led to a great deal of interest that was engendered over the question of light pollution. And in our work to improve the efficiency of the gas lighting, we particularly avoided the problem, the tyranny of horizontal lighting, which due to a factor called forward scattering is the main contributor to sky glow and so on. And in fact, if you look here, I don't know how it's going to work. Let's see it, it's in front of the camera at the moment. You can see there my business card with a gas light in it, with no light coming out above 20 degrees off the horizontal, which is the important factor to avoid sky glow and a huge amount of sideways light, like the the light the gentleman was talking about that's going all across the fields and so on. It's all designable, and we've known about it for years. Now, I joined the Institute of Lighting Engineers in 2011 and spent 5 years there. And I would relay this information to you. They had a huge elephant in the room, which was called light pollution. They never wanted it to be mentioned, talked about, or anything. They made a half-hearted attempt talking about intrusive lighting. And when I raised it at various conferences and so on I went to, it was basically poo-pooed. And in fact, on one lecture given about a street lighting scheme in Cornwall, the person giving it was quite pleased that they'd annoyed the local astronomers with the lighting scheme they'd put in. And the whole audience laughed and clapped. And it showed you the attitude of the county and metropolitan district lighting engineers. It was very frustrating trying to raise anything within that organization. And the big argument they always used was we have to have sideways lighting so we can have a bigger distance between the columns, which is actually wrong. But they won't accept that. There's a man called Chris Badley who's proved that there is a way to do that without any problems at all. And that policy has been accepted by the people who look after our motorways, by the way. But the county lighting engineers are still a bunch of nihilists. A few younger ones have got in and are now starting to take it more seriously.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for that information.
That's my first little point there. The other point is you were talking about blue light and coloured light and all the rest of it, and unfortunately Herefordshire went for 4,000 degrees blue rich lighting, which is incredibly glare producing in the eyes, and it was all done by a company called Urbid, by the way, who put in their own lighting. There didn't seem to be any proper steerage from the council there, and that comes about, this effort to put blue lighting came about from the guru in the British standards, who said that blue lighting improved your vision on the extremities on the side, completely ignoring all the drawback blue light gives you as well with that. Let me just get rid of that. We still are producing LED lighting, which is still putting out sideways lighting, which is a major problem with it. The other thing is on security lighting, which is figured quite a bit this evening side of it. The lighting that is designed for security lighting, particularly bulkhead lighting, it complies with British standards, but the British standards are all wrong, with virtually half of the light going up into the sky from it. One of the big problems we have is that electricians who install these lightings and make a choice of lighting from their local wholesaler and so on receive no education about light pollution at all, which should be included in the syllabus in the courses. There should be an effort put into that. I could go on for hours on this. Just one more point, right? Where I live is 1,000 feet up on the Malvern Hills, so I look out across Herefordshire, and I'm so pleased that it is very much a dark area. And you're dead right; it is the last one there, and we've got to protect it. But what I have noticed is that with the change over to LED lighting, we now have got a lot of little high brightness pin lights have now appeared. They're there in the evening on farms and private houses and so on. They are so tiny that they actually twinkle like stars in the sky and are quite annoying. But also on the street lighting side, there is a set of crossroads on the Ledbury to Hereford Road, which has took away the sodium lighting, put up LED lighting. This is about 6-7 years ago and so on. massive light pollution directly sideways out of it. It looks worse than what it was before. The side of
You're cutting out for me, Brian. So should we stop there for a while? But thanks very much for all your information there. I think there's a general point about the shift to LED lighting that I've noticed in many businesses where they've realized it's such a fraction of the energy use when they change over from their previous security lights that they put more RODI lights in, because it's 1/10 of the energy, and so they can still have twice the number they had before, but still a fraction of the energy use. And of course, that needs real guidance to stop doing that, and also I think legislation. But that's a situation that we've encountered. Okay, well, thanks for. Well, it's good to have Brian's knowledge there as a reference if we need that. And Yolande, have you or anyone else have any last words?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up that the satellite picture of the sky glow from the ground up is CPRE has its centenary in 2026, and it's anticipated that we'll have another satellite map available to demonstrate, because the last one was 2016. So it's quite a few years ago and it's slightly out of date. They're also looking to do a tranquility map, which is based on light, noise and disturbance. And they're hoping to have that as well for 2026, but it's still early days. But I'm really grateful for everyone who's come tonight. And yeah, it's my first time to do this talk online. So I don't feel it's been as smooth as it could have been, but thank you very much, for your interest. And if you want to get in touch, please do. Yeah, have a good dark night. Anyway.
Thanks very much, Yolande. And I think Rachel's put the question in: are there other groups around the country? Yes, indeed. We are not alone in many ways. So
yeah, actually, it's going to be because no one else is doing what we're doing in Dark Skies Herefordshire, Gordon. There's no other citizen science project. You've introduced us to the app where people can actually do through the Dark Skies UK. You can actually get your app now instead of getting a sky quality meter. But actually, the way that we're doing it, using the public participation is, and we're not astronomers or qualified electricians or lighting professionals or whatever. But I'm going to pick up Brian's point, because I think it's a really good point about education. It's about how we can get people talking about the impact of light pollution, and getting everyone, all the organisations, whether it's bats, mammals, insects, bugs, whatever, is that we all come together to actually get a cohesive, holistic message to the government about the need for dark infrastructure, because it really does matter.
I mean, I will try and make that point in the Hereford Climate and Nature Partnership, Yolande, because of course we've got representatives, got the chair of the Hereford Wildlife Trust in that board, and groups of environmental interest in all sectors, really. So I think that is a powerful link, which is why I wanted to link this in that way somehow. Plus, of course, I'm biased. I'm one of the astronomers that people like to make the sky light for. One aside, I had to work in Hong Kong for a while years ago, and even years ago, it's 100% sky glow. So kids in that area never get to see the night sky, and that's true in so many cities around the world now. And of course, if it's equatorial, so it's also quite cloudy a lot of the time, and that that makes it even worse because you get the reflected light, and you just live then in this artificial light environment most of the time, every night. There we go. We want to stop that because it is absolutely beautiful. So I recommend to go outside and look at the night sky whenever you can, because it is cloudy quite a lot of the time, but any night that's clear, go outside and have a look. Sally, you have a question?
Sorry, I don't actually. That was just a little hand clapping. I must have got the wrong icon.
Oh, well, we'll end on that hand clapping then.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Good night.
Good night then. Thanks very
Good
much for turning up.
night.